My folks basically turned me into their personal ATM when I was just 12 years old. Then, when they passed, they left me their busted, debt-ridden business in their will. That's when I finally decided to expose all the fraud they'd been hiding for decades. Now it's 5 years later, and my mom's working a register at a grocery store, the same place she used to say was way beneath her. She even sends letters from that address now. Growing up, I was always the one acting like the adult. When my dad messed up his back on the job when I was 12, my parents sat me down and made it real clear I had to step up. My little brother Theo was only 8 back then, so obviously, he wasn't expected to do a thing. By the time I was 16, I was handing over every dime I earned just so we could keep the lights on. My parents would wrap me in hugs and go on about how proud they were of their little provider. Funny thing though, those hugs only ever showed up on payday. When I hit 19, I got accepted to an out-of-state college with a partial scholarship. All I needed was for my parents to sign the financial aid forms. But they flat out refused. Their excuse? The family needed me working at home. Fast forward 4 years, and Theo got into the very same college, and wouldn't you know it, they signed his paperwork without a second thought. They even took out loans for him while I was busting my back working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. The worst of it came when I was 32. I told them I needed to cut my monthly support from $3,500 down to $2,000 because Casey, my fiancée, and I wanted to start saving up for our wedding. That's when they completely lost it. My mom actually called my boss and told him I was mentally unstable and stealing money from them, her own son. She cried and made it sound like I was abusing 2 helpless old folks. I came dangerously close to losing my senior management job over it. HR got involved, and I had to dig up old bank statements just to prove I'd been sending them money, not taking it. It was one of the most humiliating things I've ever been through. Last year, I tried to draw a line again. I told them I needed to skip just 1 month of payments. Instead of understanding, they showed up at my job and made such a scene that security had to escort them out of the building. One of my biggest clients happened to be there and saw the whole mess. They ended up dropping our company. Just like that, I lost a $50,000 commission. So when my parents told me they were updating their will after Mom had a minor stroke, I thought maybe, just maybe, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. They'd always promised me that everything would be mine someday because of all the sacrifices I'd made. Casey and I had always dreamed about living in the house my dad built on that big piece of land. It was our future. We just found out we needed IVF to have kids, but I told her we could start the treatments as soon as the will was finalized. I thought I was finally going to be free. That Sunday, we sat down for dinner, and my parents were practically glowing. I should have known something was off the moment I saw Theo there. He only ever showed up when he needed a handout. I felt my chest tighten. It was like I couldn't breathe. Casey leaned over and whispered, "I've been ready for this. I knew it was coming." Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ellen, my parents' paralegal friend. "The shop has liens. Don't sign anything. Call me now." That night, I dug into the shop's records. Just to get it back to zero, it would take $300,000. An environmental cleanup alone? That'd cost another $100,000. This wasn't an inheritance, it was a trap. A financial prison designed to keep me chained to their debt forever. The next day, I walked in with a folder full of documents and laid it down on the table. "I've learned my lesson," I said. "Here's a cease and desist letter from my lawyer." Mom started crying instantly. "How are we supposed to survive now?" "The bank's closed," I said, calm and steady. I pulled out another paper. "I've already told the creditors I won't be taking over the business." Theo's face went ghost white. "You have to take the shop, it's part of our legacy." "That legacy's all yours now," I told him. "Good luck selling the house for enough to cover it." Dad stood up, red with rage. "We'll ruin you. We'll call your work again." "Go ahead," I replied. "This time I've got lawyers." And then I walked out. I didn't even look back as they turned on Theo, demanding to know how he planned to pay off the shop's debts. 3 weeks later, Ellen called, sounding urgent. "There's something I need to tell you about your grandmother's estate," she said. "She left you a trust." Turns out, my parents had been dipping into my pockets a lot longer than I ever knew. Ellen asked me to come to her office the next morning. I brought Casey with me. I needed someone with a clear head by my side. My hands were trembling when Ellen opened that thick folder. She explained that my grandmother had set up a trust for me when I was born. I was supposed to get it when I turned 25. It had started with $150,000 and should have grown a whole lot over the years. She showed me the original paperwork, and I recognized my grandma's handwriting, just like the notes she used to tuck into my birthday cards. Then she handed me a stack of withdrawal slips, starting from my 25th birthday. Each one had my name signed at the bottom, but I'd never signed a single one of them. I didn't even know the trust existed. The signatures looked like mine, but just barely. Someone had been practicing, forging my name, and stealing from me for years. In total, over $200,000 was gone. My stomach turned. I felt like I was going to be sick. Casey reached under the table and held my hand. Then Ellen laid out more documents, bank records this time. Every single withdrawal had gone straight into my parents' account. They'd been robbing me blind while I was working myself to the bone, giving them everything I had. I hired a forensic accountant that same day. His name was Simon, and he specialized in tracking financial fraud within families. He told me this kind of thing was sadly common, parents stealing from their kids' inheritance. Happens way more often than you'd think. Simon spent 2 solid weeks combing through everything. And what he found went even deeper. Turns out, my parents had opened credit cards in my name when I was just 16. They maxed them all out, and never made a single payment. That's why I could never get approved for anything when I was younger. I always thought I was just bad with money, but the truth was, my credit was wrecked before I even hit adulthood. Then Simon found something else. That house my parents had been living in all these years? It wasn't even in their name, it was in mine. They'd bought it using money from my trust, and since I was over 18 at the time, they needed my signature. But instead of asking, they forged it. Legally, I owned the place free and clear. All those years I was handing over rent for that house, I was paying to live in a place I already owned. The irony of it all hit me hard, and I couldn't help but laugh, but not in a happy way. Simon's digging uncovered even more. Turns out, my parents had been listing me as a dependent on their taxes, even though I hadn't lived under their roof since I was 20. They were raking in tax breaks while I was stuck paying higher rates as a single filer. On top of that, they'd been collecting disability checks for my dad's old back injury, all while he was secretly doing construction jobs for cash. Every lie, every shady move, every forged document, it was all in black and white. Simon pulled it all together into one monster of a report, over 100 pages long. I took the whole file straight to the police. The detective who got my case was named Harper. She said cases like this, especially within families, were hard to prosecute, but the proof was rock solid. She told me she needed to question my parents and Theo. Gave me a heads up that it might get messy. I told her it was already a disaster, nothing left to ruin. The days after that were eerily quiet. Too quiet. Then Theo showed up at my apartment. He was a sweaty, nervous wreck. He pounded on the door like the place was on fire. As soon as I opened it, he shoved his way into the living room, eyes darting like he was being chased. He blurted out that Mom and Dad were in full panic mode because the police had called. He demanded to know what I'd done. I told him the truth. I was just trying to take back what was mine. Theo laughed, one of those fake, bitter laughs, and said I was being dramatic, like always. Then his eyes landed on the forensic report lying open on the coffee table. He started reading it, and the color drained from his face. He looked up at me and asked if I was actually going to send our parents to jail. I told him plain and simple, they were the ones who made that choice the day they decided to steal from me. That's when he lunged for the report, but Casey stepped between them. She stood firm and told him to leave or she'd call the cops right then and there. He backed off and left, but not before tossing one last guilt trip over his shoulder, said I was tearing the family apart. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Our parents already did that years ago." As he stormed out, I caught a glimpse of his hands. They were shaking, just like mine had been when Ellen first told me the truth. For the first time in a long while, Theo actually looked scared. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My mom had gone on Facebook and posted this dramatic sob story about how her ungrateful daughter was trying to destroy the family. She spun it like they'd sacrificed everything for me, and now I was abandoning them in their old age. Pretty soon, my phone lit up with calls from aunts and uncles. Even my cousin Lily messaged me, asking if I really called the police on my own parents. I didn't answer a single one. Casey grabbed my phone, deleted Facebook, and said, "Let's focus on what actually matters." That afternoon, Detective Harper called with an update. She'd questioned my parents, and of course, they denied everything. They claimed I had asked them to manage my money, that I'd given them full permission to tap into the trust. They even handed over a typed letter, supposedly from me, saying they were authorized to withdraw funds. The signature on it looked like mine, but not quite. Harper said she was sending it to a handwriting expert for analysis. She also mentioned that my parents had hired a lawyer, some guy named Donald, known for taking on messy family drama. 2 days later, I got a call from my boss. My parents had contacted him again. This time, they claimed I was having some kind of mental health crisis and needed help. Said I was making up wild accusations because I wasn't taking my medication. I'd never been on meds a day in my life. My boss asked if I was okay. I had to sit him down and explain the whole messed up situation. He listened quietly, then told me to take a few days off to get things sorted. He said he understood, but I could tell he was skeptical. That night, someone slashed all 4 of my tires. The security camera in the garage just happened to be offline that day. I knew in my gut it was Theo, but there was no way to prove it. Casey wanted us to stay in a hotel for a while, just to be safe. But I wasn't about to get pushed out of my own home. Instead, we had new locks put in and added a doorbell camera. The following week, I got a letter from their lawyer. They were offering to settle. They'd admit to taking $50,000 from the trust and promised to pay it back over 10 years. In exchange, I'd drop the criminal charges and keep sending them $2,000 a month. I laughed out loud when I read it. Even now, they were trying to keep their claws in me. I had my lawyer reject the offer right away. That's when things really blew up. My dad showed up at Casey's job. He told her coworkers she was a manipulative gold digger, that she was turning me against my family. Said she was only with me for my money, which was pretty rich, considering I didn't have any money thanks to them. Casey's boss had to threaten to call security before my dad finally left. Casey came home in tears that night. She said maybe we should just take the deal and be done with it. I told her absolutely not. They'd already taken too much from us. A few days later, Harper called with more news. The handwriting expert confirmed it. The signature on that authorization letter was a forgery. She also noticed something strange. The withdrawals from the trust had stopped about 6 months earlier, right when my mom had her stroke. Harper's theory? They were planning to accuse me of elder abuse and claim I was stealing from them. But the stroke threw off their whole plan, and now they were scrambling. With the legal heat turned up, my parents tried a different move. They started working the phones, calling every relative they could. They told my Aunt Grace I'd cut them off and Mom couldn't afford her meds. Told my Uncle Frank that I was trying to steal their house out from under them. They even called Casey's parents, saying she was driving a wedge through our family. Casey's mom called us, worried sick. Casey spent nearly an hour on the phone explaining what was really going on. By the end of the call, her parents were shocked and furious at what my folks had done. Meanwhile, Simon, the forensic accountant, kept digging. What he found next made my stomach turn. My parents had been using my social security number for years. They opened utility accounts in my name and never paid the bills. They'd taken out payday loans using my information and defaulted on them all. The damage to my credit was massive, years of cleanup ahead. Simon told me he'd seen a few cases like this in his line of work, but hardly ever one this deep. He asked if I wanted him to keep going. I told him yes. I needed the full picture. Every ugly detail. Theo tried calling again and again. I didn't pick up. He left voicemails begging to talk. Said Mom was making herself sick from stress. Said Dad's back was acting up because of all the pressure. He even claimed I had been calling them lately. But that last voicemail hit different. His voice was slurred, he sounded drunk. And then he admitted something I wasn't expecting. He said he'd known about the trust all along. He said Mom and Dad had promised to cut him in on the money if he stayed quiet. He told me he was drowning in debt and needed his inheritance now. He begged me to just let it all go. I saved that voicemail. Detective Harper called me that Tuesday morning to let me know she was arresting my parents. She said they'd probably be out on bail soon, but the charges were serious: fraud, forgery, identity theft. The whole list was long. I sat in my office staring blankly at the wall, completely unable to focus. All I could think about was how I spent years giving them everything, while they were stealing from me the whole time. Then my mom called from jail. I don't even know why I picked up. She was sobbing uncontrollably, calling me a monster. She said she wished she'd never given birth to me. Said Theo was the only child who truly loved them. Said I'd regret all of this once they were gone. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Casey wrapped her arms around me while I cried, not because I was sad, but because I was furious. Just absolutely filled with rage. They made bail later that same day. Theo put up his car to help them, and I heard later he even borrowed money from loan sharks to pay their lawyer. He was in deep now, but that was his choice. He sided with them, like he always did. The following weeks were a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. My lawyer started working on a civil case while the state handled the criminal side. We had to back up every claim, every forged signature, every stolen dollar, every shady account. The pile of evidence kept growing taller by the day. Their lawyer kept tossing out settlement offers, each one slightly better than the last, but still completely insulting. They wanted to admit to just a little wrongdoing, pay back a small chunk of the money, and keep getting support from me like nothing ever happened. It was delusional. One afternoon, I ran into my dad at the grocery store. I was just grabbing stuff for dinner when I looked up and saw him at the end of the aisle, looking older and grayer than I remembered. He started in about the past, how he used to take me fishing, how proud he was when I got my first job, how we could fix this like a family. I told him we weren't a family anymore. We were a victim and a criminal. That's when he snapped. His face went red like it always did when he got angry. He said I owed them for raising me. I told him that parents don't get a prize for doing the bare minimum. Then he raised his hand like he was about to hit me. A woman nearby, named Brooke, stepped in and asked if I needed help. My dad backed off and stormed out. I finished my shopping with trembling hands. My mom, on the other hand, tried emotional blackmail. She started sending me old family photos, Christmas mornings, birthdays, beach vacations. Each one came with a message saying how much she loved me, how everything she did was for my good, how the trust money went toward family needs. I didn't reply. Casey suggested blocking her number, but I wanted to keep all those messages in case we needed more evidence of harassment. Theo was unraveling fast. The loan sharks were breathing down his neck, and his money was all tied up in our parents' legal mess. He started pounding on my apartment door at random hours, yelling for money. Our doorbell camera caught every moment. He looked awful, skinny, scruffy, with dark circles under his eyes. And for a second, I felt a little sorry for him. But then I remembered, he knew what they were doing and said nothing. He chose them over me. Detective Harper called with more updates. Turns out my parents had done this kind of thing before. An elderly aunt of my dad's had once claimed money had gone missing from her accounts. She'd suspected my parents but never had proof, and she passed away before anything could be done. Now there were questions about my grandmother's will too. Not long before she died, she changed it to leave everything to my parents, cutting out her other kids. The signature looked off, and investigators were digging into it, though too much time had gone by for criminal charges. Meanwhile, things at work were falling apart. Even though my boss had said he understood, the ongoing drama was affecting everything. Clients were asking questions about family showing up at the office. Coworkers were whispering about the police involvement. One day, I overheard someone say I must have done something to deserve all this, because who'd believe parents could steal from their own kid? I started quietly job hunting. Through all of it, Casey was my anchor. She handled the legal calls when I couldn't bear to. She kept a log of everything that happened. She made sure I ate, reminded me why we were fighting in the first place. We deserved a clean start, to build a family of our own without this mess hanging over us. We deserved to spend our money on IVF, not bailing out thieves. We deserved peace. Simon kept finding more financial wreckage. My parents had opened investment accounts using my name and played the stock market with my money and lost big. He even found property they'd bought using my trust fund. Not just their house, but empty land and a rental home. It was all in my name, but I'd never seen a cent. They were pocketing the rent, letting the bills fall to me. Then their lawyer made another offer. This time they admitted to taking $150,000. They offered to hand over the house and the rental to settle the debt. They also said they'd agree to cut contact if I dropped the criminal charges. My lawyer said it was a step forward, but still way off the mark. The total damage was more than $400,000 when you counted everything, plus my destroyed credit and wrecked career. We turned it down. That's when things got dark. I started getting anonymous threats. Texts saying I'd regret this. Emails spelling out awful things that would happen if I didn't back off. I sent it all to Detective Harper. She arranged for extra patrols around our apartment. She told me my parents denied sending the threats, but said the tone matched their other messages. She was pretty sure it was either them or someone close to them. Then one night, Casey and I got home and found the front door wide open. Nothing had been stolen, but the place had been messed with. Photos were flipped over, drawers opened, papers scattered across the floor. It was clear, they were sending a message. They wanted us to know they could get to us whenever they felt like it. We called the police and filed a report. The officer told us that without any signs of forced entry, there wasn't much they could do. So that night, Casey and I packed a bag and stayed at a hotel. The next day, I met with Detective Harper. She told me the criminal case against my parents was solid, but the intimidation tactics, they were worrying. She suggested I think about getting a restraining order. Problem was, we couldn't prove it was my parents doing it. Theo had airtight alibis, and my folks claimed they were too upset to even leave the house. Without clear proof, our hands were tied. Then my cousin Lily reached out. Said everything going on had got her thinking. She remembered little things from when we were kids, how my grandma would always give me birthday money, but it would vanish, and my parents would say they were saving it for me. She also remembered them doing something similar to her brother when his dad passed away and left him money. She told me she believed me now. It was a small win, but it meant something. Then the prosecutor called with an update. My parents' lawyer was pushing for a plea deal. They'd plead guilty to lesser charges, skip jail time, and just serve probation with restitution. The prosecutor said the final decision was mine. Trials could go either way. Juries sometimes felt bad for older parents, even guilty ones. I told her I needed time to think. Casey and I stayed up for hours talking that night. A big part of me wanted them behind bars. They hadn't just stolen money, they'd taken years of my life. But another part of me just wanted peace. I was tired. We were both tired. The stress had taken over everything. We hadn't even started IVF because we were too emotionally wiped out. We were constantly on edge, afraid of what might happen next. I started thinking maybe probation and restitution would be enough. Maybe it was time to move on. But then Simon called. He said he'd found something huge. Turned out, my parents had taken out multiple life insurance policies on me, over $1 million worth. They'd been using money from my trust to pay the premiums. I felt sick. Why would they need life insurance on me? Simon said in cases of financial abuse, it wasn't uncommon. If something happened to me, they'd cash in big. Suddenly, all those threats felt a lot more real. I called Detective Harper right away. She took it seriously. Said the combination of life insurance, harassment, and threats painted a disturbing picture. She warned me not to be alone, not even for a second. Casey and I started switching up our routine. Different routes to work, shopping at new places, never anything predictable. My parents must have sensed the walls were closing in. Their lawyer came back with a new offer. Full restitution, $400,000. They'd sign over all the properties and plead guilty to every charge. In return, they wanted the lightest sentence possible. My lawyer said it was the best deal we were likely to see. The prosecutor agreed. With good behavior, they might serve a year, maybe 2. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I wrestled with it. These were the people who raised me. Sure, they messed up, but they were still my parents. But then I thought about everything they took from me. The college education I couldn't afford. The wedding Casey and I had to delay. The kids we hadn't started trying for yet. They'd stolen my past and tried to rob me of my future. They deserved to pay for that. Before I could make my decision, Theo pulled one last stunt. He showed up at my office with 2 guys I didn't know, big guys, rough-looking. Security stopped them at the lobby, but Theo was shouting up toward my window. He yelled that I'd ruined his life, that the family business debts were crashing down, and people were after him now, all because of me. Then he said if I didn't fix it, he'd fix me. Security got them out, but the threat was loud and clear. I called Detective Harper again. She pulled the security footage and identified one of the guys with Theo. He had a rap sheet, assault, extortion. Worked for the loan sharks Theo owed money to. It all clicked. Theo was drowning in debt, and now he was desperate enough to drag me down with him. Harper said she'd have him brought in for questioning. That night I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking, how did it come to this? My own family threatening me, stalking me, trying to tear me apart. All because I finally stood up and said no. All because I dared to claim what was mine. Casey held me while I cried. Not out of sadness, just bone-deep exhaustion. I was so tired of being scared. So tired of fighting. But I couldn't quit. Not now. We were too close. The next morning, everything exploded. Theo got arrested for making terroristic threats. The loan sharks he owed were also picked up on unrelated charges. Then came the big one. Police searched my parents' house and found it all. Forged documents. Fake IDs in my name. Records of every shady thing they'd done. They thought they were untouchable, so they kept it all. That arrogance is what finally brought them down. Later that day, my mom called from her lawyer's office. She sounded calm, calmer than I'd ever heard her. She said she was ready to take the plea deal. She'd plead guilty and do her time. But she wanted one thing in return. She asked to see me, just once, to explain why they did it. I didn't owe her anything. But I was curious. After everything, I wanted to hear her say it. Casey didn't want me to go. She thought it was a trap. But I needed that closure. We met at the lawyer's office, with everyone there, lawyers, security, witnesses. My mom looked small, fragile. Older than I remembered. She started talking about her childhood, how poor they were, how she swore her kids would never struggle like she did. She said the trust was supposed to help the whole family. She called me selfish for wanting it for myself. Said she only took what I would have wasted anyway. Even facing prison, she couldn't own up to what she'd done. She still saw me as a bank account, not a daughter. Then my dad spoke. He talked about his injury, how it destroyed his dreams. Said I was supposed to be his retirement plan. That raising me meant I owed them. And by not going along with it, I had betrayed that duty. He said Theo got it, understood loyalty. But me? I was poisoned by Casey and her selfish modern ideas. My dad actually believed the lies he was telling. In his head, taking from me wasn't stealing, it was just me doing what I was supposed to do, serve them. I sat there, listening to both of them try to explain themselves, and I didn't feel a damn thing. No anger. No sadness. Just this cold emptiness. These people weren't my parents. Not really. Real parents don't rob their own kids. Real parents don't wreck their child's future for a few extra dollars. Real parents love without conditions, not just when they're getting something out of it. I stood up to leave. My mom asked if I had anything to say. I told her I forgave them, but not for their sake. For mine. I wasn't going to carry around their poison anymore. As I turned to go, my dad called out after me. He said when they got out, they'd need a place to stay. He actually thought I'd take them in after all they'd done. I didn't even look back. I just walked away. Casey was waiting for me in the car. She asked how it went. I told her. I'm free. And for the first time in my life, I truly was. After that, things started to move fast on the legal side. My parents pled guilty: fraud, identity theft, forgery, the whole list. They were sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, with 5 years probation after that. They were ordered to pay full restitution, though I knew I'd never see all of it. Theo also pled guilty, for making threats. He got 6 months and was ordered to attend anger management classes. The loan sharks? They were a separate mess, but not mine to worry about anymore. The house was finally transferred into my name. Casey and I went to check it out once my parents were officially behind bars. It was surreal walking through it without them there. Everything looked the same, but the whole place felt off. This was supposed to be our dream home, and now it felt stained by years of lies and manipulation. We decided to sell it. Put the past behind us, and use the money for a fresh start somewhere clean. Simon kept working through all the financial mess they left behind. My credit score slowly started to climb again as we disputed account after account. My employer stood by me once the truth came out in court. A few coworkers apologized for doubting me. Others still whispered behind my back, but I couldn't care less. I'd already survived worse. Even got promoted. Turns out my boss was impressed with how I kept it together through all that chaos. The house sold quicker than we expected. A young couple bought it. They looked happy, excited about the big backyard for their kids. I signed the paperwork and didn't feel a single thing. Just another document in a long line of them. The money went into a brand new bank account, one my parents had never touched. Casey and I found a cozy little apartment across town. Nothing big or flashy. But it was ours. No ghosts. No history. Just peace. 6 months into their sentence, I got a letter. From my mom. The prison return address alone made my stomach twist. Casey wanted me to toss it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. She went on about how hard prison life was. How the other inmates were mean to her. How the food was awful and how much she missed her bed. Not one word of apology. Just passive whining and not so subtle hints that I should send money to her commissary account. I threw it in the trash. Theo was the first to get out. As soon as his 6 months were up, he started calling. I changed my number, but he managed to find the new one. Left a bunch of voicemails, talking about how sorry he was, how he changed. Said he just needed a little help getting back on his feet. Maybe crash at our place for a bit. Maybe borrow a little money. Same old Theo. I blocked the number. Simon eventually wrapped up the last of the forensic accounting. When he showed me the final total, it nearly knocked the wind out of me. Between the stolen trust, credit fraud, and all the unpaid taxes, my parents had taken nearly $500,000 from me over 20 years. And that didn't even count all the lost chances and emotional toll. Simon helped me file what claims we could. Some debts were too old, but we cleared most of them. With the financial pressure finally gone, Casey and I started IVF. The first round didn't work. The second one ended in a miscarriage. It crushed us, but we kept going. At least now, we could afford to. We weren't sending thousands of dollars a month to fuel someone else's greed anymore. That money was finally going toward building something real, our future. My extended family started to come around. Aunt Grace called to say she was sorry for believing all the lies. She admitted she should have known something was off when my parents kept asking for handouts, even while claiming I was taking such good care of them. Uncle Frank sent a card, saying he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Even a few cousins reached out with support. Not everyone believed me, but enough did. That was enough. Detective Harper called with an update on my grandmother's case. They couldn't prove anything criminal, but the last changes to her will were suspicious as hell. Turns out the lawyer who drafted them had already been disbarred for some shady stuff. She said if there hadn't been such a time gap, my parents might have faced even more charges. I landed a new job, better pay, calmer environment. No one there knew my backstory, and I liked it that way. I finally got to be seen for the work I did, not for the mess I'd come from. My new boss, Morgan, ended up becoming a kind of mentor. She taught me how to advocate for myself. How to stop putting everyone else's needs first. Prison changed my parents. When they finally got out after 18 months, they looked old. Worn down. Smaller. They moved in with Theo, who was in a cramped apartment. From what I heard through the grapevine, they were struggling. Good. Maybe they'd finally learn what it really felt like to be poor instead of faking it while robbing me blind. They tried to contact me when they got out. Showed up at my old place, but we were long gone. Went by my old job, but I didn't work there anymore. Even tried going through Casey's parents, but her family held the line. Eventually they gave up. Or at least, I thought they had. Then the third round of IVF worked. Casey was pregnant, with twins. We were thrilled, but also scared out of our minds. 2 babies meant double the responsibility. We got to work, buying cribs and car seats, setting up college funds that no one else could ever touch. We were going to give our kids what I never had: security, love, and parents who put them first. That's when my parents made one last move. They sued me. They claimed the house sale wasn't valid because they'd signed the paperwork under pressure. Said I tricked them into confessing everything. Their new lawyer, some low-rent guy named Mitchell, filed a civil suit trying to get the house money back, plus damages. It was a pathetic Hail Mary, but I still had to deal with it. When my lawyer read the suit, he just laughed. Said it was a joke of a case. I mean, they had already pled guilty. It was pretty clear who the real criminals were. Hard to backpedal and play the victim after admitting to all of it, but we still had to jump through the legal hoops. More legal bills. More headaches, right when Casey was pregnant. Thankfully, the judge tossed the case out pretty quick. He basically told their lawyer to stop wasting the court's time. You can't say you're guilty in criminal court and then claim innocence in civil court. Doesn't work like that. Their lawyer tried to appeal, but nobody else would touch the case. Turns out even bottom-feeder lawyers have a line. Around that time, Theo tried reaching out, not to say sorry, but to blame me. Told me our parents were broken because of what I did. Said they cried every night. Said Mom's health was failing and it was all my fault. I didn't answer him, but I did look into it. Turns out Mom had a job bagging groceries. Same kind of work I did back when I was 16 to keep our lights on. Karma really is a thing. Casey went into labor 2 weeks earlier than expected. I was in the middle of a meeting when she called. I tore out of there and drove like a lunatic to the hospital. 8 hours later, our twins arrived, 1 boy and 1 girl, both perfect. We named them after Casey's grandparents. Not mine. We wanted these kids to have a clean start, no toxic baggage tied to their names. Somehow, my parents found out about the babies. They sent a card to the hospital. Inside, there was a note going on about grandparents' rights. They actually threatened to take me to court just to get visitation. Said I had no right to keep their grandkids from them. I handed the card straight to my lawyer. He fired off a cease and desist letter. They had no claim on anything in my life. Not my time, not my money, and definitely not my kids. To be extra safe, we packed up and moved again. This time, to a completely different city. Didn't matter for me, my job was remote anyway. Casey found a new gig quickly. We bought a cozy little house in a solid school district. Nothing fancy like my parents' old place, but it was ours, and it was real. No lies. No manipulation. Just love. The twins grew fast. Every milestone felt like a small victory. First smiles, first steps, first words. My parents missed every single one. And honestly, sometimes I felt a twinge of sadness about that. My kids would never get to know their grandparents. But then I'd remember what those grandparents had done. Better to have no grandparents than ones who poison everything they touch. 2 years rolled by quietly. We got into a rhythm: work, parenting, daily life. I even made some new friends, other moms and dads who didn't know anything about my past. We had playdates and coffee get-togethers, all free from drama. It was the kind of normal I never thought I'd have. Just calm, steady happiness. Then I got a call from Ellen. She was the old paralegal friend of my parents, the one who helped me uncover the trust mess. Said she was retiring and cleaning out her files. She'd come across something she thought I should see. Turned out, when I was born, my grandmother had set up separate education accounts for all the grandkids, on top of the trust. College funds meant just for us. My parents had drained those too. Forged my name and closed them out the minute I turned 18. Used the money to pay for Theo college while telling me there wasn't anything available for mine. Even after everything else, that hit deep. But Ellen brought good news with the bad. The bank had kept detailed records. The fraud was all documented. I added it to the existing restitution order with my lawyer's help. Their probation officer was furious they'd hidden even more stolen funds. The judge tacked on another year of probation and raised the restitution total. They'd be paying me back for the rest of their lives. Still not enough to undo the damage, but it was something. Theo vanished around then. Rumor was he skipped town, ducking people he owed money to. When he stopped paying rent, my parents got kicked out of his apartment. They landed in a shelter for a bit, then eventually found some subsidized senior housing. The kind of place they used to say they were too good for. When I heard about it, I didn't feel anything. No joy. No sorrow. They had made their choices. Every single lie. Every theft. Every manipulative move. It had all led to this. They had 2 kids who might have loved them once, but they lost both by choosing money over family. Now they had nothing. The twins started preschool. Casey and I cried at drop-off. They walked in with big smiles, no fear or worry. Just happy, secure little kids. That's what I'd worked for all along. Everything my parents had tried to steal from me, we got it anyway. My credit finally bounced all the way back. Took 5 years, but we cleared every mark they'd left. Even got approved for a business loan. I launched my own consulting firm. Put all that hard-earned knowledge about financial fraud to use helping other victims. Turns out, there are a lot of us out there. Grown kids finding out their own parents had stolen their futures. One client's case hit me especially hard. Her name was Brooke. Same name as the kind woman who once helped me when I had nothing. Her story was nearly identical to mine. Her parents looted her inheritance, ruined her credit, kept lying while hiding money. I helped her dig through the mess and find justice. It felt good, turning my pain into something useful. The business kept growing. I brought Simon on as a contractor. He tracked the fraud, and I'd help the clients deal with the emotional wreckage. Because that's what cuts deepest, not the money, but the betrayal. Realizing the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones tearing your life apart. It takes time to come back from that. Casey thought I should write about it, maybe start a blog or something to help others spot the signs. I thought about it. Still not ready. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm just focused on moving forward. Creating the kind of life my parents never wanted me to have. Being the kind of parent they never even tried to be. Then, when the twins turned 5, we had one last scare. My dad had a heart attack. Theo popped up just long enough to give me a call. Said Dad was dying and wanted to see me. Said I would regret not saying goodbye. I asked if Dad had said he was sorry. Theo went quiet, then admitted no. Dad still thought I owed him. I wished Theo well and hung up. Dad survived, but barely. Needed constant care after. Mom couldn't provide it while working. They ended up in separate facilities. Mom in senior housing. Dad in a nursing home. The state paid because they had no assets. All their schemes, and they ended up exactly where they had always feared. Dependent on strangers because their children wouldn't help. I know some people judge me. Think I'm heartless for not helping them. Those people didn't live my life. Didn't have their future stolen by the people who were supposed to love them most. They don't understand that no contact isn't cruelty. It's self-defense. The only way to stop the cycle. The twins are 7 now. They ask about grandparents sometimes. We tell them age-appropriate truths. Some people aren't safe to be around. Even family. It's sad, but protecting them is more important than maintaining appearances. They understand in their own way. Kids are smarter than we think. Casey and I are trying for another baby. IVF again. But we can afford it now. My parents' monthly payments actually cover the treatments. Ironic that the money they stole is helping create the grandchildren they'll never meet. But that's their loss. They chose money over family, and lost both. Sometimes I dream about them. Not nightmares anymore, just sad dreams. What could have been if they had been different people? If they had loved me for me instead of what I could provide. But you can't change people. You can only change how you respond to them. I chose freedom. Looking back, I'm grateful in a weird way. Their betrayal taught me strength. Their lies taught me to value truth. Their conditional love taught me to love unconditionally. I'm a better parent because I know what not to do. My kids will never doubt they're loved. Never feel like walking ATMs. Never have to buy affection with paychecks. The trust money is long gone, but I've built something better. A life free from manipulation. A family based on love, not transactions. True security that no one can steal. My parents gave me nothing but trauma and debt. But from that, nothing. I built everything. And that's the best revenge of all.